I've owned the Sony FX6 cinema camera for almost 3 years now. I've had the opportunity to film some of my most incredible projects on this camera, ranging from Nike, Air Jordan, Adidas, music videos, destination weddings, small business videos, documentaries. I have the real world experience to talk about why I believe in 2024 this is still one of the most incredible cameras you can pick up if you're looking to really elevate your career as a videographer and now transition to a cinematographer and start working on larger projects, larger sets. Right off the bat, I want to start off this review talking about the flaws of the Sony FX6. For someone who's used it for 3 years and counting, thousands of hours, countless of sets, I know the ins and outs, I know the strengths, and I know the flaws of the Sony FX6. My biggest flaw with the Sony FX6 is its playback for clips. I think it's so counterintuitive. It's so annoying when you're on a set with 10, 15, 20 people, and now the director calls cut and he wants to see playback of that last clip that we just filmed. They want to see the framing, they want to see the colors, the exposure, and you having to sort through with this little joystick and trying to scrub through the clips, fast forwarding or reversing, is very counterintuitive. It's very annoying, and it's something that you might not think is a big deal, but when you're, again, having people pause the set just so they can see the last frame and you're kind of struggling to do playback, it's very annoying and kind of embarrassing as well. I think it's the biggest flaw of the Sony FX6 in my opinion. Another flaw that most people will point out right away, it's the fact that it doesn't have a 3.5mm audio input on the body whatsoever. We all know that if you take off the top handle, you lose all your audio inputs, you lose your 2 XLR ports. I'm here to tell you that it's not a big deal that it doesn't have a 3.5mm jack, because this camera, if you're really starting to elevate in your career, you're working as a cinematographer, most of the times you don't need a microphone whatsoever, because you're working on a set that someone is already a sound mixer, they have their own audio recorders, and they're running a lav system or a boom straight to that sound mixer, and you're using timecode, which is a port that this camera has because it's a cinema camera. So you don't really have to worry about even having an on-camera microphone. And you're not most likely going to be using a DJI lav or a Rode wireless lav on bigger sets or bigger productions that, again, there's a budget for someone to be in a sound mixer. But again, 3.5mm jack, it's not a big deal. I've been used to it now for years now, not having it. Where I think this camera still truly shines in 2024, it's its dynamic range. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a set where either a cinematographer and I'm a camera operator has Ari Alexa, either LF, a Mini, Alexa 35, and the B cam is my Sony FX6. And most of the times we're now just setting up the shot and we're looking at our monitors and this DPS come up to me, is like, why am I even here? Why do I have an Alexa Mini or Alexa 35 on this set when your camera looks exactly as close as possible to the image that they're getting in their camera? And obviously the cameras are different. There's multiple reasons why you will still have an Alexa on set, but the dynamic range, the image that this camera is able to capture is out of this world. It's something that has really allowed me to push my lighting, push my shadows, really create a dynamic image and just not worry about the image falling apart because the codec, or it's not 12-bit, or it's not raw. The XAVCI is just one of the best codecs I personally have been able to work with. I've gone to color houses in LA. I've been next to DPs who have Alexa 35s and Alexa LFs, and they have always been able to tell me that this image of this camera is just really incredible for its price point. And that's the main thing you should even be focusing on as a cinematographer, is the image that your camera can capture. Sure, all the other bells and whistles are always going to be a bonus. The image at the end of the day you're capturing is not up to par with what you see or you envision or what your director envisions. It's really going to be hard for you to continue to invest or even keep that camera. You're going to be thinking about other cameras all the time. 4 years, I haven't had another thought of upgrading whatsoever. Low light capabilities. You can't make a Sony FX6 review without talking about the low light capabilities. As a cinematographer, as you go in your career, you're always going to find yourself on smaller sets where you might just, for example, in my case, I do a lot of projects where it's just me as a cinematographer. I have a first AC who can pull focus for me and just rig out my camera for the configurations that I need. And I probably just have a PA or two. And that's it. I don't have a key grip. I don't have a gaffer. I'm more so investing into location and talent to bring my visions to life. And there's times where I'm running and gunning, I'm filming at 4 in the morning. I just don't have the light that I would need to capture at 800 ISO. So when I bump up to 12,800 ISO, I maybe have to slap on the ND and still maintain the image quality that I want. The dual native ISO on this camera is a feature that once you have it, you can never really take it for granted, because you know the possibilities it unlocks for you as a run and gun filmmaker or a cinematographer on small sets, that you're able to just still get the exposure that you need in an environment where you might have all the tools available for you, or you're just running and gunning, and you're still going to be able to capture and expose your image properly. Versatility, I think, is the one word that comes to mind for me when I'm approached by other cinematographers or DPs who want to know what the Sony FX6 is like. Is the camera worth upgrading to if you're coming from a Sony FX3 or A7S III or a mirrorless camera on that level? The versatility is just truly unmatched. It's very lightweight. I think a lot of people have never talked about that in their reviews, that this camera basically weighs the same amount as my Sony FX3 when it's stripped down to just the bare body. So that allows you to unlock a lot of versatile rigging options. You can easily put it on an RS3 Pro or a gimbal of that level and just have the little LCD monitor on top, so you could still use touch autofocus and expose your image correctly. You can rig it out a little bit more how I usually configure mine, with a V-mount plate, cinema lenses, some spider arms, nice top plate, and then I have my whole bridge RE plate at the bottom to just be able to mount bigger lenses, more accessories, follow focuses, Teradeks, wireless receivers, and you really have a camera that can really keep growing with you on your sets. I've been on short films, I've been on music videos, I've been on big commercial productions, and the camera just hasn't really slowed down because of its body design. It's not something that you find yourself working against. If not, you just have so many more options. And I think that's the biggest downfalls of this Canon C70 and the Ursa 12K. The Ursa 12K is just massive, it's power hungry, it's so heavy. There's no way you can put that on a gimbal. And then the Canon C70 is shaped so weirdly as well that you have to use other configurations to make it work. And both those cameras aren't full frame. So I think once we compare this camera to other cameras in this price range, you have to remember those cameras aren't full frame. This is a full frame cinema camera. Another great benefit of owning the Sony FX6 is that it's relatively affordable as a cinema camera. For $6,000, you're getting a full frame cinema camera that is highly in demand for so many various productions because of all the IO ports, because of its dual native ISO performance, because it has internal variable NDs. It's just a camera with a lot of enticing features that a lot of sets are now starting to either say, hey, we have a Sony RE-Alexa Mini LF as an A cam, let's use a Sony FX6 as a B cam. There's a lot of sets now where I'm finding myself that this camera just keeps getting requested more and more throughout the years have gone by. So that leaves you in a position as a cinematographer. Once you have the Sony FX6 cinema camera paid off, which again is relatively easy to do so, if you're renting it out for a minimum of $250, you have to rent it out less than 30 times before your camera's fully paid off. I've owned mine for almost 3 years. Paid it off the first month I bought this camera. So that just goes to show you how much money I've been able to incur just as a camera package line item in my invoices. So it's extra rentable income in my pocket that just now has been able to afford me to just have much more cash flow and just profit more on every single production because I'm renting out my camera that is fully paid off. In 2024, should you still invest into the Sony FX6 cinema camera? First of all, let's talk about the Sony ecosystem and what I love so much about it. If you're someone who now has a Sony FX30, you can easily jump your way up to the Sony FX3 and then easily jump your way up to the Sony FX6. Given the fact that Sony gives us S-Log3 in all of these cameras, it gives us dual native ISO in all of these cameras, provides us with so many different flexible codecs in all of these cameras, so you're not left stranded when you upgrade to a camera like this. You know how to expose for the image, you know how to use Cine AI. It's a very natural progression. And even after this, we now know we have a Sony Burano coming, we have a Sony Venice 2. I personally will be upgrading to the Sony Burano, not in 2024 but next year, because I still am able to use this camera this year for so many different projects. It's been able to hold its weight. It's the dynamic range, the image quality, the dual native ISO, the versatility, the body design is something that you just can't really get in other cameras at this price point. I can't tell you how much this camera is rented out for me. I'm on probably 100 sets a year at this point, ranging from all different sizes, but I'm able to rent it out and again make that income. So this camera is still viable as an income source, having it in my camera package. In 2024, as someone who's owned this camera for almost 3 years now, I'm still very satisfied with my Sony FX6. best investment that I've made as a videographer who has now become a cinematographer. I think it just works on so many different sets. It's so versatile. The dynamic range and the image quality still hold up. And again, it's a very viable, rentable camera because it's so in demand for so many different type of productions. And you can look at my reel, you can see the image quality. I think it holds up very, very high. And I have high standards for myself now. I know what to expect out of my image. And I mentioned I do want to upgrade to the Verano, but not this year because I still want to get one more full year out of my camera. It's more rentable income than I can just put in my pocket and put towards the Sony Verano. Sony FX6 in 2024, I believe is still the best cinema camera you can get for your money's worth at this price point. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm more than happy to answer anybody's questions about this camera, the workflow, the codecs, the exposure. Key tip, I don't like to overexpose my Sony FX6. I like to underexpose. So thank you everybody for watching. I'll see everyone in the next video. Peace.